Yo, what's checking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That's Anwar Richardson, and it's Monday, which means time for a little Monday overreaction show. Do us a solid. Hit the like button. I was about to just go straight into asking Anwar for some heavy hitting Monday overreactions, but I should remind everybody, click on that little bell, get the notifications for when we have new videos. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We are inching closer to 7,000 on our quest to 10,000 subscribers, and then on the 20 and 25,000 and beyond. We thank you for those of you who've been a member of our little family from the very beginning, those of you who have joined recently, and those of you who will do so in the future. Anwar, the Longhorns are still unranked. Kind of a surprise to me. I thought 70 to 35 might have been something that would have got them into the top 25. Still unranked, going on the road to play TCU in a game that's so hard to describe and break down because of the historical nuances to these two teams. Steve Sarkisian held his press conference earlier today. I guess I will just lead off the first question to you. Any overreactions to anything that Sarkisian said today? And then we can kind of move on from this into this weekend and anything that might, be related to this game against TCU.
I don't think, for me, Catch, I don't think I have a huge overreaction to anything that he said. I thought this press conference for me was kind of, what I would have kind of expect. He's asked about TCU. I think the favorite thing that he asked about TCU when someone asked him about the struggles that they had with them in the past, but he said we're going to show up, kick off, and play football. So you can tell it was a little of an annoyance, I think, and he probably got tired of the TCU questions. But this is a fan base, and these are media members who, he said, look, he threw out the stats. He's well aware that TCU and Gary Patterson has had Texas's number for the last several years. What is it? 6 out of 7 they've won.
Yeah, but it's 7 of the last 9.
Yeah. So, and we know they won 7 in the last decade. So I didn't won last year. I think knowing that he's very well aware of that, very well aware what they're going to do from a defensive standpoint. And then I thought it was interesting too, Catch, where he's tried to say that they wouldn't buy into the lie of that this will be the same team that played against SMU. And you and I both know that Gary Patterson gets up for this game. It ends up being his natty for whatever reasons. I don't know what it is. But it ends up being, of all the games Gary Patterson coaches in, this is the one that this team always seems really dialed in and zoomed in for. So, I wouldn't say there's a huge overreaction to it, other than I think he's really aware that TCU has had Texas's number.
Yeah, and what was interesting is when he did rattle off the recent history between the two teams, it was in a question that wasn't part of the question. He went out of his way to say, hey, this has not been a game we've done real well in, and that's part of our objective this week is to change that. I thought, there wasn't a whole lot to overreact to today. There wasn't a moment, if you will. This was just one of these press conferences that when you have a good team and you win the games that you're supposed to win, press conferences can be pretty boring. There's not a lot of drama and just kind of handling your business.
But I do have an overreaction, though.
Well, I think my only overreaction is, man, he answers questions fast. I thought it was a problem today. Not that it's his problem. The media today did not show up with enough questions. And look, I live in Houston. I'm not even in Austin right now. It's not like I showed my ass up for the press conference, and I could have. I didn't. So I can't be too critical. However, it felt like today media members were being given the microphone to ask questions, and they didn't have questions in their mind. They weren't prepared. And if they had a question, then they got a second question. I felt like today some of the questions didn't make sense. And Sark answers questions so fast. It's funny because Herman would do this thing sometimes where if he got a good question, he'd be like, hold on a second. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Okay, I've had time to think about it. And I always kind of gave Herman credit for that because I'm okay with a guy having a few seconds to think about how he wants to answer something if he wants to really engage in a conversation. Sarkeesian was engaged today, but man, he takes his swings. He swings on the first pitch every time. And it's rather, it's almost like question, answer, next. Question, answer, next. And by the end of it, I thought he outlasted the Texas media. Like I thought Kirk today was like, Jatavian Sanders, have you thought about what you're going to do? And oh, by the way, who's good on defense? Like it was just, there was a little bit of that today, but all in all, kind of a nothing press conference. If you're Texas, you'll take another one of those next week.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do the press conference where you're 3-2 going into Oklahoma and it feels very, and you've lost 8 out of 10 to TCU. And, you just assume have exactly what happened this week, next week. It wasn't a press conference to have, I think, staggering overreactions to. And that means Texas is typically, when that happens, they'll be playing pretty good football.
Yeah. So I'll give you my general overreaction, though. We alluded to this on Saturday a little bit. Had a chance to think about it. I think from my general Monday overreaction, I think if Texas goes out and beats TCU, I think this team is going to be in the Big 12 championship game. I'm going to give you my overreaction.
Was that an overreaction, though?
I think because there's still a lot of games left. I mean, we still wouldn't be halfway through the season.
Well, it's a reaction.
It's a react.
I don't know how big of it, like on, you don't get to see this because you're at the press conference.
Uh-huh.
But when Alex Loeb introduces the team or Sarkeesian every week, right before he goes on the air, he gives the ESPN index for what the ESPN index is for the team qualifying for the Big 12 championship game.
Okay.
Oklahoma's first at 87%, which feels high.
That feels like an overreaction.
Thank you. Like if you watched them play West Virginia on Saturday and you showed up and said, I'm about 90% sure they're definitely in the Big 12 championship game, that'd feel like a bit of an overreaction. Texas is second at 54%. And then if I'm not mistaken, God, I want to say Baylor was third at 21, and then Iowa State. So it was interesting that it's funny because when we did the postgame show on Saturday, I was like, keep an eye on this Baylor-Iowa State game. If Baylor can close the deal, I think it changes the dynamics of what Texas will be asked to do to get to Dallas. And I think they wake up today, and a week ago, it felt like they had to be perfect, potentially outside of Texas and OU. Mm-hmm. Now it feels like there's a little more wiggle room. And this team might have the highest ceiling of any team in the Big 12, which given them a little bit of wiggle room, like I said, I don't know. I don't know that your reaction is an overreaction. I think maybe 2 weeks ago it would have been, but I think after people have seen Texas the last couple of weeks, it's just starting to feel like maybe Texas it's not a radical thing to say Texas will be one of the top 2 teams, I think, in the Big 12 based on what we've seen.
No, I don't think I think it's giving a team a benefit of the doubt that, let's just, to be fair, probably we fall from this banana in its tailpipe quite often.
You won me over, Anwar. You've won me over. You're right.
And it's like, because we did it this year. We said, oh man, Louisiana, man, that was a great win, man. Arkansas, that's a lower level SEC teams. I mean, look what the hell, they smashed Louisiana. Not good as Arkansas, and then Arkansas happened. And so this is a team that history tells us when it comes to Texas and Gary Patterson, we should be betting on TCU, right? I mean, everything says that's where your money should go. And if you're betting on Texas, you're giving them a benefit of the doubt that they just have not earned. Just haven't earned it. But yet Sarkeesian has got this team flowing in a way where you're allowing yourself to kind of say, I think they may be on to something. Like, I think this is the start of something that could be pretty good. This might be it. And I know Sarkisian says they'll get a better version of the TCU than they got, that they saw against SMU. I'm not convinced of that. I mean, I know coaches have to tell their kids that in order for them to go out but one of the things we talked about after the game catch is starting to believe that if Texas executes at their A level, ain't too many people in this conference that can really hang with them. I mean, outside of maybe an OU, but if we see what we saw over the past couple of weeks, I think they run the table as far as the conference is concerned. So but I want to see it against TCU. And PTSD, as everyone knows about, my Longhorn PTSD has always kicks in and says, but that being said, Catch, if they go out and they win, and especially if they win in a convincing fashion, but even if they just get past them, I definitely, based off of everything we've seen in the Big 12, this team is the one that I would say, all right, this team, go ahead, this is a Big 12 championship competing team, or at least in the game.
I got an overreaction for you.
Go for it.
And it's not one that I would have had in my 10 thoughts from the weekend. This is a Ketchum original that I had the epiphany while you were talking. I think what's really different about this Texas team right now, and I think the thing that makes giving confidence to where it's headed is that Texas has some legitimate star power at the skill positions. If we forget about Casey Thompson for a second, I mean, Bijan Robinson, look, you can make a borderline case that Jamal Charles deserves to be in the NFL Hall of Fame. He had one of those Terrell Davis kind of careers where, I think his yards per carry is the best in the history of the sport, but he didn't have 10 great long seasons that allowed him to pile up the numbers where he definitely gets in. I don't think he will, but you can make one of those modern day stats cases for Jamal Charles being in the Hall of Fame. He was an All-American at Texas. And I think people see Bijan Robinson, and Texas fans today are like, he's better than Jamal Charles was. And Jamal Charles was ridiculously good. It says a lot, though, that Texas fans are watching. Texas, one thing Texas knows, all Texas fans, regardless of age, most of them know great Texas running backs. Mm-hmm. I mean, even Deontay Foreman was great, and he gets so little respect because there have been so many before him, whereas there haven't been a lot of receivers who have done what Devin Duvernay did a few years ago. It was like, oh my God, no, only Jordan Shipley ever did this. And so suddenly, you were able to talk about him in historical terms after really one good year. Bijan Robinson's special. Forget about the numbers. You can just look at him and go, that guy, we won't see many of him ever. And Xavier Worthy as a star, I think Texas fans are growing confident in. And then you add the Casey Thompson part of the equation, and I think you can make a case. Here's my big overreaction. It's a two-parter. I think this is the best quarterback, running back, wide receiver trio of star power that Texas has probably had since 2007, when you would talk about Colt McCoy at quarterback, you would talk about Jamal Charles at running back in his final season at Texas, and then Limas Sweed, before he got hurt, was a preseason All-American. Those three guys, the thought was Texas could win a Big 12 championship with those guys. And then Sweed gets hurt, and Colt McCoy had a really weird 2007. But that trio, you have to go back 14 years, I think, before you can find one that is on the level of this trio that Texas has right now. Casey Thompson right now, if he had a few more passing attempts, would be the number 2 quarterback in the NCAA right now in passing efficiency and number 1 among all major conference quarterbacks. Bijan Robinson leads the team, or leads the Big 12 in rushing right now. And Xavier Worthy's on pace for, in a 14-game schedule, he'll break 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. And that's assuming he gets to the Big 12 championship game and plays in a bowl game. I think it's the best in the Big 12 too. That may be my biggest overreaction. Is that what makes Texas, I think, such a strong potential candidate to play in Dallas for the title is they have big game, big name players, I think, emerging at those three positions. And those are the things you eyeballs tell you. Like, it's what's made Oklahoma so different is you could go from year to year, their quarterback, CeeDee Lamb, toss in a running back, and you're like, holy shit, they're good. Texas has a chance because of the star power to be, holy shit, they're good at the most prominent positions on the field. And it makes them, I think, different than the other teams in the Big 12 right now.
No, I think you're right, because when you start looking at the trajectory of that big three, I mean, Xavier's is definitely on pace to be newcomer of the year as far as the Big 12 is concerned. I mean, so you anticipate that. You can definitely foresee a scenario where Bijan or Casey is an offensive player of the year for the conference, trending towards that for either one of them. And when you talk about like more reps and more wins will put Casey in a Heisman conversation. I'm not saying that's the outcome, but if they continue, I mean, we know the quarterback position is a sexy position. It's a glamorous if they win the next two games and he looks good in the next two, I mean, he's in the conversation. He becomes the guy you start talking about. So,
I mean, the quarterback rating will be real shiny if the team starts getting. It won't matter if he's not on a good team, but if in 2 weeks from today, they're 5-1 and 15th in the country, his story and his stats are going to. If you were in Vegas right now, go to a sports book, he may not even have, he may be part of the field. It might be worth throwing a sneaky $20 on whatever Casey Thompson's Heisman odds are right now. If you can find them, he's a guy that maybe as well as anywhere in the country right now, in 2 weeks, his profile could be in the stratosphere if he just keeps doing what he's currently doing.
Yeah, I'm looking up something. That's a great.
I bet he doesn't even have an individual line right now, and probably falls into the category of random player not with odds currently.
Yeah, he would definitely be the person that if you can find a book that may or may not have him, he is a guy. I mean, because Bijan he's still at plus 6,600. This is according to Vegas.
So that would mean if you bet 100 on Bijan, you would win 60. What'd you say?
6,600.
Woo! Casey's got to be like 25,000
easily. I mean, he's not. I don't. According to Vegas Insider that I'm looking on, Vegas Insider right now, I don't even see him listed right as.
What's the highest player number they have? It's great YouTube broadcasting, by the way, when we do internet searches in the middle of this. But we'll finish this out. Humor me.
Emory Jones, the Florida quarterback, is a plus 8,000.
Okay.
And so is
I would, if I could go to Vegas and get the field at 10,000 or better, I'd put a hundo down on Casey Thompson. It feels like of all those crazy wild flyer bets, because that's the thing I wrote about in my 10 thoughts from the weekend. You keep waiting for him to regress to the mean a little bit, because other than the Arkansas game, his passing efficiency in every game he's ever played in where he's thrown the ball, he's at like 180 or above in every game. And I don't think there's enough appreciation yet for so far his consistency of high level play. I think he's going to be one of those efficient. I think he's going to be one of those. The analytics are going to love him. as the season goes along. And I think you're going to start hearing a lot of, if Texas keeps winning games, they're going to start pointing to Casey Thompson and saying he's the best quarterback in college football that nobody's talking about. I think Saturday against TCU, though, is where a step gets taken. If Texas fans are a little upset that they didn't get any street cred for that win over Texas Tech, but I think a lot of college football fans will watch this weekend. And if Texas beats TCU, they won't say that TCU is a good team, but they'll say, well, TCU usually kicks their ass. So maybe we got to pay a little bit of attention that they're a little bit different going into Oklahoma. But I think there's going to be a lot of people this week. I think TCU will be a trendy upset pick in this game. And look, TCU deserves that. As bad as they were against SMU, they physically bullied Texas year in and year out. This is one of these games that Steve Sarkisian was hired to change.
Yeah. I mean, we know the OU game is always a coin flip, but to your point, the TCU games, the Oklahoma State games, like these games where these programs have given Texas fits that Texas should be better than. This is what he's here to do. He's here to, again, we know Oklahoma, all right, got it. But the Gary Patterson domination, like that's got to end. And that's, like I said, he's here for that. He's here to end something like that. And then, the other program. So I'm absolutely 100% with you, Catch, as far as that's concerned. Now we'll see. Like, we'll see what, as Sarkeesian talks about the guys' intent in practice and, feels like the buy-in. We'll see how this team handles some success. They didn't handle success very well, Catch, after the Louisiana victory. The Texas Tech was a bigger victory than Rice was. So we will see what they come back with once they have to go on the road again against a, Gary Patterson team that, defensively, Catch, I mean, they've given this offensive line fits. I mean, over the past few years, those stunts that they run.
Fitz is doing a lot of work there, Anwar. It's been more significant than Fitz.
Yeah, fair.
What is the stages of giving someone problems? Fitz is on the scale, and then I don't know what's next. It's next.
Yes. So there's a 1 to 10 level, right, of frustration. So they should be at that 9 to 10, if not 10 level, at all points, because that's how good TCU has been. Also other thing Catches for interesting. Zach Evans versus Bijan. This is the first time we get a chance to see that. Who did you have ranked higher as a running back? I know you do your Lone Star. I
had Bijan ranked higher than Zach Evans. At one point, Zach Evans was, I think, my number one player in the state. He dropped down a little bit, but yeah, I would have had Bijan ranked higher.
Okay.
I thought Bijan was a 6-star on that, not every 5-star should be ranked exactly the same, because there are some guys that I think end up being better than that. Mm-hmm. And for me, Bijan was of that level. I don't know that I ever quite thought of Zach Evans quite like that.
Okay. Would it be this will be an interesting battle for 2 years, I guess. I guess because I don't think at this rate we're expecting Bijan to go past next year. So it'll be interesting to see how they wrap up. What they deal with as far as Evans is concerned, is going against Bijan help you during practice or not? Because he's clearly he was a stud in high school, and clearly
he's really good.
He is good.
Anwar, I think Texas fans think that Zach Evans has been a bust, that he didn't have a big year last year, but if you looked at the numbers, like he averaged like almost, I think, 7 yards a carry, and his last 2 games, he went over 100 yards, but that was kind of out of sight, out of mind. I mean, he'll show up Saturday with about 100 yards less than Bijan, but he averages almost a full yard more per carry than Bijan, maybe even more than that. I want to say Bijan's like at 6.2 and he's like at 7.7. I mean, this is a legitimate, scary running back that Texas will play on Saturday. And it's one of the big question marks about this defense is, can it stop giving up the big plays that will eventually get this team in trouble if they can't?
You remember back when the previous staff was recruiting them, one of the quotes was Zach Evans was priority number 1, priority number 2, priority number 3, priority number 4. We're all the way up to 7. Like that. That was what he was from a priority level.
One of the best quotes that I think you've ever fished out of any of these sources.
It was. And then, of course, like anything, so Zach Evans reveals his top 5. Texas isn't in it. And then it's like, it's okay. And then they end up getting Bijan, right? And so at the end of the day, you say Stan Drayton did his thing, and they went after Zach Carr, but they would stay with Bijan, and you could arguably say they got the better of the two. But people forget how good he was in high school, and I think it's easy just to think about the Zach Evans who had trouble in high school and maybe a little trouble at TCU, and just to think of him as a problematic person, but not think about who he is as an athlete. And who he is as an athlete is a tough matchup problem for a team that wasn't great at stopping and run previously.
I want to stop us there on the Bijan Zach. That needs to be its own video.
Okay.
So we a little taste of it, but I think there's more to uncover there. Before we move on, one more thing I wanted to bring up, and then we can go into some parting shots on this. On this Overreaction podcast video. The schedule just changed over the weekend in a way that I think looks quite different a week ago. When you wrote your Sunday pulpit 8 days ago, you talked about the 3-game stretch that included Tech, then TCU, and then Oklahoma. And it has felt like that is a chapter of the season, and that is somehow the end of a stretch, I suppose, is how I think it's felt to us every week going into the offseason through the opening part of the season. 4 games in, as big as the TCU game is this weekend for all of these reasons, that historical reasons, it's probably the 5th toughest game in the next 5 games. Like, we're suddenly at a point on the schedule where Texas goes at TCU, then they play Oklahoma on a neutral field. That's still number 4 Oklahoma. I mean, everybody wants to diss them a little bit, but they're still the number 4 team in the country. Then the next week at home, suddenly you're playing a ranked in the teens Oklahoma State team that I don't know what their immediate schedule looks like, but suddenly they're ranked. And then the next week, you're at Baylor, who suddenly is the number 21 team in the country after they beat Iowa State. And then the next week is the Iowa State game. So there's a weird thing in the schedule where we always kind of knew that Oklahoma State and Baylor were whatever those games are going to be. We're at a weird point in the season where 4 of the next 5 games are on the road. If we count Oklahoma as a game that Texas has to travel for. Sure. 4 of the next 5 are on the road. All 5 teams at some point this season have been ranked. TCU was ranked. They're not ranked now, but they have been. Oklahoma's number 4. Oklahoma State's in the teens. Baylor's number 21. And then the last game of that 5-game stretch, which includes 4 of the 5 at either neutral or on the road venue, then they go to Iowa State. This weekend isn't, Anwar, the second game of the 3-game stretch that I think we all thought it was. It's the beginning. It's the first game of what looks like now to be a really 5-game grind that will define the season, because once you get through Iowa State, it's Kansas, West Virginia, and Kansas State. So it's it's weird. It doesn't feel like any of those teams are unbeatable. But 3 of the 5 are true road games. All of them are against teams that are either ranked now or have been ranked or were ranked last week as soon as a week ago. It's an interesting little change, I think, in the way we're going to perceive this season. I think TCU is now the beginning of something. And whereas I think all year long we've looked at Oklahoma as a marker moment in the season, no matter what happens in that game, the very next week, suddenly the Oklahoma State game feels really important, regardless of what they do in that game. They'll have to come back the next week and probably play a ranked Oklahoma State game and then get ready to go on the road for 2 consecutive weeks against teams Texas probably should beat. But, I mean, Baylor, I think, has earned a little street cred and going undefeated and beating Iowa State last week. We wouldn't call them world beaters, but boy, you better know where they are on the schedule. They matter a little bit. They're ranked ahead of Texas.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're exactly right. I mean, the TCU, OU, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and then Iowa State with, like you said, 2 back-to-back games. And realistically, you're talking about, 4 of the 5 are away from DKR. So TCU is away from DKR, OU, Texas is away from that, Baylor and Iowa State with only 1 home game mixed in there, the Oklahoma State game, which will be a huge.
You'll be on the road a lot.
You said what?
Said you'll be on the road a lot.
I will be, apparently. I mean, straight up. Now, if it's 11 o'clock starts, it's fine. I'm okay with that. I mean, I can deal with that. But, if they do a 7 o'clock, Baylor game, I mean, that's a interesting decision at that point. But yeah, I mean, you're right as far as the stretch is concerned and what they have, ahead of them. And it would be interesting catches. I think you and I feel that the success that Texas has had over the last 2 games, hard to do that for the rest of the season. Like, I think we're not expecting them to drop 70 in every game, even though, I didn't think Casey Thompson, I thought, okay, Alamo Bowl is kind of, the shining moment, and all he does is just lead his team to touchdowns or field goals. So I keep waiting for that to drop off, and that doesn't happen. But yeah, once they get to that point. So yeah, TCU, interesting matchup catch, interesting what happens there. But that becomes I still say they beat TCU. I feel really good about where they are going forward. There's teams that we catch. You had a fan base yelling to bench Spencer Rattler on Saturday night. I mean, that's very telling. And I know the fan base doesn't have anything to do with coaching decisions, but it shows that Spencer has struggled enough to the point where it's an issue, and there's an offensive issue there.
What's crazy, Anwar? His efficiency rating right now is basically where Sam Ehlinger's was his entire career. It speaks to the standards that place has at the quarterback position, that he's not been terrible. He's just been pretty good. And pretty good gets your ass booed in Norman at quarterback.
If you're not competing for a Heisman, boo that guy. Boo him.
Our guys start in the NFL every time. Yeah. What's up, Spencer?
It's really bad. Okay, but let me ask you this. It's super early. It's Overreaction Monday. We got plenty of time. But the last thing I will ask you a question. This could be it for me. Where are you leaning at when you start thinking of matchups? I know we got some more time, but are you leaning Texas in this game?
Weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you're leaning. Okay.
Yeah. Because if they don't beat TCU, this season's going to go off the rails. Because the schedule's not easy. I mean, we just outlined it. You better have some moment. Here's the thing. It's interesting. There are no more Rices or Texas Techs on the schedule for 5 weeks. And the thing is, if they beat TCU, you'll legitimately be able to move the goalposts as soon as it happens. And you'll go, well, TCU's 2-2. Now they play Oklahoma. Now they play Oklahoma State. Now they play Baylor. Now they play Iowa State. Everybody will, if they beat TCU, everybody will move the goalpost from they always kick your butt to, oh, that's what you should have done against them. But the next 5 games on paper are against just like strong opponents, not gimmies by any stretch of the imagination. And I completely forgot about the Oklahoma State dynamic. I looked at their schedule. They play Baylor this weekend in the battle of ranked teams. I completely forgot that Oklahoma State has a week off before Texas.
Oh, wow.
They get a bye and 2 weeks to prepare for going on the road at Texas.
Wow.
And then, that, and then I'm trying to look at Baylor's schedule too. I don't want to do the damn thing where I'm just looking at whatever, but yeah, there's some interesting little dynamics there that the schedule to me is just getting really interesting. Baylor's schedule goes like this before Texas. Oklahoma State this weekend,
okay.
West Virginia at home, BYU at home. Then they get a bye week and then they host Texas.
Interesting.
So the 2 games directly after Oklahoma, in both occasions, the team playing Texas has had 2 weeks to prepare.
You are going to give Texas fans so much ammunition right now to use against the Big 12.
No wonder they left the Big 12 on. They looked at the schedule and they were like, this is some bullshit.
Oh, man. You are feeding the beast right there.
I had completely forgot about that. Because we talked about when the schedule first came out, the little, who got bye weeks and when they got the bye weeks. That's no insignificant detail. You get TCU this week, then you get Oklahoma, then you get Oklahoma State, who's had 2 weeks to prepare for you, Baylor, who's had 2 weeks to prepare for you. You haven't had a week off in any of this. Texas's week off is almost meaningless for them. At no point of this season do they get the week off when I guess they get a week off to prepare for Baylor. I guess that's when the bye week happens.
Yes. 20.
So at least it's fair on the Baylor side of things. I think I'd forgotten that Texas even has a bye week because they don't do it like the NFL. They don't just pop it on the schedule.
No.
They should. All your bye weeks should be listed so fans can go, oh, I've got that week off. Okay, cool.
Yeah. As reporters, we have to know so we can say, oh man, there's a weekend in the football season. I might be able to do something.
If you're dating, you know when the bye weeks are.
I know when the bye weeks are.
You got any other parting shots before we go?
Nah. The only you know what? I got a parting shot. Okay. Shout out to my oldest son, Maximus, out there doing his damn thing in his basketball stuff. So basketball and ones out there in Round Rock, out at the Pack. So he's a third grader who they've got training with middle schoolers right now in Round Rock, and which is crazy to see this little tiny guy handling himself but doing it good. So shout out to him. He had 2 good games, one on Friday in Round Rock, one on Sunday at the Pack. I had about 12 steals at the Pack against kids his own age. It was really fascinating, to be honest with you, because he doesn't talk much. He's really, really quiet, and which is kind of not talking much. But he just goes out there and just transforms into this defensive stopper of something. So handling the points. So really, shout out to my man. I was so happy with him, with his effort and everything. I was like, hugged him. I always hug him, and so happy with him. And I just gave him like $10 afterwards. Like, here, just do something with it. I don't know. Then I feel like, should I reward him? I don't know. I just did it anyway. I was just caught up in the moment.
Good job, Dad.
Very, very proud of him regardless. But
you felt so much joy that you spontaneously just gave him whatever cash you had in your wallet. Like,
Right.
I don't even normally keep cash in my wallet, but take the $10.
Yeah.
I took it out of the ATM for you.
It's usually for the food truck that I go to that only takes cash, but I had it and I was like, man, I'll go back to the ATM. Here, this is yours.
My final parting shot for today, I would just simply say, it's nice when your fantasy football team wins so easily that there's no drama or stress in it whatsoever. Like, people could probably go back and look at the last 2 Monday videos that we've done, and you could probably see fantasy football angst on our faces, even if we wanted to try to hide it. Both you and I this week look like we're going to be just perfectly fine. Even if we made mistakes in whatever we were doing this week, didn't even matter. This could be a week where your captain's pick doesn't even matter. I'll just pick whoever's still eligible to play because my team's doing so good. And I beat the hell out of a team this week after a really bad beat a week ago. And it just made yesterday easy. And it means tonight I get to watch the Cowboys on War, and I don't have to root against Dak Prescott because I've got Zeke and my opponent has Dak. And the way that always works is I get the bad end of it with the broomstick. Like, this would be the game where Dak throws 5 touchdown passes and beats me by a point, and I've got to be happy that the Cowboys either won or lost, and happy for Dak, but had like crushed as a fantasy football manager. This week, I have such a big lead.
130-62. I had to go look it up. 130-62 when he's got one guy left, and you've got Zeke, you've got Devontae Smith.
I got Xavier Worthy Jr.
Yes. And he's got 62 points with Dak Prescott. So you can just chill out and just watch.
I could be like, Dak, throw 8 touchdowns. I don't care. Right. Let's go beat the Eagles.
Yeah.
It's a nice thing when that happens. I only mention it on this show because it so seldom happens. So for all of you out there, if it hasn't happened for you yet this season, there'll be a moment this year when you just coast to a fantasy football win, and it just makes the whole football weekend a little bit easier to cope with and be happy about. And I'm happy today. It's why Anwar and I didn't have any negative overreactions. We were in a good frame of mind. So for happy Anwar Richardson and happy Jeff Ketchum, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, get the notifications for when we have videos. We'll have them all week long. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Later.